Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, everybody, to your favorite
Woo.
writing podcast. Over there, we have Karissa Harlow, aka Catherine, aka Lewis. I'm Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien, and we're so glad to have you here. And I don't know what y'all's vibes are today, but today we are presenting with very strong. See, Carissa's got like strong, like angel fairy, goth angel fairy vibes. And I think
Nice.
I just have like some straight Irish vibes going today, which I'm actually
Oh,
quite proud of.
yes.
It was an accident, but I'm wearing a very green shirt and I'm wearing my actually from Ireland, like green
Mm,
sweater. And
cool.
my hair looks very red today. I don't know why, but
Mhm.
I'm quite pleased with it. So
Looks
very like
good.
iconic vibes for us today.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, I have the like lavender lipstick on, which is not
Mhm.
something I normally do, but I think it kind of works for
You
me.
look like a
So,
fairy.
well,
It looks
thank
very good
you.
for you. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think if we had like two like iconic looks for us, I feel like this is pretty good for each of us. Like for a
Yeah,
daily
fair.
type vibe, I feel like this is good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true, true.
I like it.
Um, so in somewhat exciting news, I think the timing is slightly off, but I think by the time you guys are hearing this, it'll be about a year since we started the podcast. I
I was
know.
literally just thinking about that. I was
Mhm.
literally just like, it's been about a year, I think. Like we've been
Yep.
doing this one for about a year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the first episode came out on September 14th,
Ow,
2021.
ow. Good for
So
us.
I don't know why it came out to 53 episodes because isn't there's supposed to be 52 weeks in a year, but I know that's not
Yeah.
exact. So I don't know if that's normal or strange, but
Maybe
53.
maybe our Christmas episode, was that a bonus one? I
I
don't
think we
know.
counted it.
I think we
So
counted it. Okay. I don't know,
I
you guys.
the
I don't
math
know.
question mark question mark question mark.
I had the same thing. I
But
wrote down episode 53 today and I was like, 53. Why does 53 sound wrong? And that's why. That's exactly what it
mhm,
is. It does
yep.
sound incorrect, but
But yay for about a year.
yeah,
So
woohoo.
exciting.
Yeah, that is good. Well, how has your week been leading up to this momentous day?
I know. Good. I saw a lot of family this week. My uncle came to town for the weekend and I don't know, that was just fun. Plus my cousin's girlfriend was in town also because it was Labor Day. So, people were able to travel and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd met her once before, but I kind of got to know her a little better. And so that was
Nice.
cool.
That's
We played
good.
some games. We played this game called Truth or Dab, which is like a card game where it's like you either have to answer a pop quiz question or tell like a truth about yourself that's on the card. And if you don't, you have to take a dab of like this super extreme hot sauce.
Oh
And my
my
cousin
gosh.
is so into it. His girlfriend was like, I don't know why he's so into this. I'm like, it's probably just because he enjoys seeing people in pain, like 50%
Probably.
joking. Um,
Sadistic, yeah.
yeah. So it was really funny. There were a couple of awkward questions, and we were just like, nope, we're going to skip those because like our
Yep.
grandparents were there and we're like, moving on.
Yep.
But otherwise, it was pretty funny. So it was
That sounds
cool.
like a delightful game. I'm not much
Mhm.
into games, but that one sounds fun. I like the kind of games where like you could even play it like without a board game, like without like the
Yeah.
board to go with it, or even the cards if you'd have just like had stuff written down. That's my kind of
Mhm.
game. Like we played there's that game Smartass. And we
Yeah.
played that over the weekend. And I was like, I've always avoided it because it looked like there is a board to it. But I was like, you could just read off these cards and answer these
Right.
questions, which is
Yep.
fun. It's
Yep.
when we get the competition and the board game involved that I'm like, I'm out. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye. Enjoy.
Um, yeah, but that was fun. And my dad and both two of my uncles are turning 60 this year at various times this year. So we kind of celebrated that.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
my dad got this really cool. My dad is really big into Coca-Cola, right?
Yes.
I don't know if I've told
It
podcast
is one
people
of
this,
the
but
many things about him that really just stands out, like it's
yes.
iconically weird in my mind. He's a
He
very
just
unique
one of the
person.
things. Yes. One of his office slash room is just filled with Coke paraphernalia, right? He has all the
Mhm.
puzzles, he has a Barbie, he has a plane made out of the cans, he has like almost every single piece of just like paraphernalia that Coke has released. It's really hard to
Mhm.
buy him stuff because he basically has everything. He has a gumball machine, he has pillows, he has all kind of stuff. So my mom and the rest of the family kind of pitched in to get him a popcorn machine, like a Coke popcorn machine, and it
That
works. So
is
it's like a movie
cool.
theater. Yeah, it's like a
Uh-huh.
movie theater Coke themed popcorn machine,
Oh
and we
my
haven't tried it yet or
goodness.
anything, but it looks really cool. So
That is so
that was fun.
cool. That is super
Yes.
exciting. I love when a gift benefits multiple people. Like I've got some gifts that I got for Javi because his birthday is coming up as well this month. And I'm like, I cannot wait to give you these gifts so that we can use them together.
Right. This is for me too.
Yeah, exactly.
But then I went to lunch with my grandparents, which was cool. I think that was yesterday. So that was fun. Nothing super interesting happened there. I mean, that you guys would find interesting. So yeah, that's I mean, basically it. My mom has also been watching the Hoarders show. Have you seen that?
Yes, I have.
So I've been feeling really good about how organized my stuff is.
Yeah, I've
So
never
that's also
seen
there.
like your space, even in college, disorganized, really. The
Oh, thank
closest
you.
I've seen was your water bottles all over your desk.
Yes.
But
I don't do that
aside from
anymore.
that, and see those, so there you go. It's probably
Yeah, I've
very neat.
improved.
And of course, I'm sure you make it look nicer for recording too, but like your background is always
Sure.
nice and your bookshelves are always nice.
Yeah.
You're always like
the bookshelves are just like my pride and joy. So they better look nice. I spend a lot of time on them. I did also, because I was watching the Hoarders show with my mom, I culled about 15 books that I'm gonna sell so that I can buy more. But I'm not gonna tell you what they are because they're books I did not like. But that was weird and kind of freeing because I am out of shelf space.
Yes.
So
I understand. Yeah, I've gotten to where my shelves, I'm starting to like stack books on top of like the books that are all like lined up. Now I'm to the point where I'm stacking books. And this is with I finally got another bookcase. By God, I mean, my mom moved in with us while she's getting her house together. And so she brought in one of her bookcases and it's much bigger than mine. So all my books that had been like in stacks on the floor, I got to like actually put on the bookcase. Yeah. And I thought there's still a little bit extra room. Like it should be a while before I have these completely filled up. Nope. They're completely filled up.
So easy to fill them. I also really like having cool knickknacks on my shelves to make them look interesting.
Too.
So it
this
takes
is
up
the problem.
space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The knickknacks take up space. So now I'm at the point where I'm like, I guess I have to put my knickknacks away until I have more bookshelf space because I just have no space for now my books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I have room for 15. Not really. There are still books on the floor, but technically I now have room for more. But
now you have in your like brain catalog space, you have like 15 more slots open.
Have I told you I do have an actual book inventory of every book I own? I made it one day.
That does not shock me, actually.
I'm getting really close to 1,000.
I'm not quite scary. There yet, I definitely don't. You literally have a library.
I do. I don't know what number makes it official, but if it's 1,000, I'm so close.
I feel like the books, I feel like the little library at in the old tiny little town I used to live in did not have 1,000 books. So I feel like you've already surpassed what the requirement to be a library.
That would be awesome.
The library of Karissa.
Yeah.
AKA
plus
Catherine, AKA Lewis.
Exactly. Plus my family got me that little embosser thing so you can emboss your books from the library of. I've been slowly making my way through that. I am actually a library. So
you legitimately are a library. That is so cool.
So when I say I culled books, I mean I actually went into the inventory and deleted them.
Smart. That's a good idea. See, I'm literally writing down, remember to research built-in bookshelves, because as we are, making plans to build our barn dominium, I'm like, I will never have a better opportunity than to line several of the rooms with bookcases. I mean, we're not doing like a from scratch floor plan. So we do have to use like this preset floor plan to save money, which means I can't just be like, and a whole library room, which is unfortunate, but it does mean I can add built-in bookshelves to every single room and no one can stop me. So
yes.
I mean,
it's a good compromise. Go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was my week. What was your week like?
Let's see. Well, Labor Day obviously was nice. We went and we celebrated a friend's birthday, and a couple days before that, we got to go see our nephew's baptism. So that was cool. So it was like a very busy weekend, and we are working on the chicken run now, which I've probably mentioned before. But the hardest part involves digging a about 18-inch deep trench around the entire perimeter of the orchard, which is what's becoming the chicken run. So that's a lot. So we've got literally only one side is trenched and the wire is buried in there now. So nothing can like dig in to get at the chickens. But we still have to do like 3 other sides of the orchard. And then we get to wrap around like the tall wire. So it'll have like the wire walls. And then we have to basically turn around the chicken's door, knock out a piece of wood, and then the chicken run will be ready. So like when I say it, it doesn't sound like that much work, like that many steps. But the trench digging is taking a lot of effort. So I literally set my alarm.
A lot of work.
Yeah. So I set my alarm for 5:30 in the morning tomorrow to try and get up and actually get like a few hours of work done before I have to, do my 9-to-5 job. So hopefully that works well. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We're planning Javi's birthday, so that's fun. Actually, some of his family's coming out, and I don't think they've come out here yet. So I was like,
cool.
Hey, Mom, would you mind? Like, we can make the boys sleep on the floor, and you can sleep in like our really nice bed with me, so that his parents can have your room while they're here, because her room is it's the only one that we've made nice. And so like all the other rooms are not just like not nice, like they look gross because of like how old they are. So I'm like, it would be really nice if while they're staying here, they could stay in the nice room, which of course she's like, of course, but I feel really bad because it's also like her like one peaceful space. So I wouldn't be surprised if she's like, I'm actually going to go stay with a friend that weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if she just finds a way to like be out of the house altogether. But so that's exciting. And our shower, if you guys have been here for a hot minute, you know that our shower has been under demolition basically for months. But the last of the tiles that we need to finish it came in. So Javi's going to pick him up tomorrow, and then I'm going to put him down with the adhesive. And the next day I'm going to put down the grout. And then next week we should officially have our shower back. And I am so excited. It'll be right before his parents get here. So that'll be great. Because right now 4 of us are sharing the tiny little hall guest bathroom and have been for months. So I'm like, I don't want to do that to them. Yeah. And then also kids were having people over for his birthday party. I'm like, what if someone's in that bathroom? Like we need to have access to another bathroom. Right. So it's been a long time coming, but I'm glad that we're getting it finished. It's also so silly because I'm like, we're going to have to do this again in a year, like for the new house, but whatever, like we need a shower until then. So yeah, I think that's pretty much been my week. It's just like lots of like logistical stuff, but such is life. I haven't gotten to work much more on my book, but I've gotten to talk a lot about it because Kendall, my co-host over at our sister podcast, That Pretentious Book Club, she's been telling me all about her Midsummer Night's Dream retelling. Yes. So I've gotten like a lot of like creative energy, but I haven't gotten to do anything with it. And also here's my final complaint. She's making me read Great Expectations. Okay.
That's right. You do not like Dickens.
I don't like Dickens, and it's a really long book. And so, but we're still, that's for next week. But she basically told me after we recorded a couple of days ago, she's like, you might want to like get started on that this week early. And I was like, oh my God, really? So I have to read the middle grade book we're doing in the next episode. And I have to start Great Expectations this week. So that's pretty much my extra time is going to reading, unfortunately, but we'll see. Unfortunately, I mean, I say that I know what you mean, but yeah, but I need to get my editing done because I'm so close. But this, unfortunately, like the deadline for finishing reading these books is a lot closer than I would typically like it to be. So, yeah. But then I think that's the last of like her book picks for a while. So cool. I mean, not that I haven't enjoyed her book picks, but the last one was Treasure Island, and spoiler alert, I thought it was a garbage book. Do not recommend. Treasure Island is a garbage book. Have you read it? Do you like it?
No, I've never read it, but
it is not only mind-numbingly boring, it's also offensive in the sense that it's a great concept and he just didn't do anything good with it.
Oh, like I hate that.
Like good character names, good book title, good concept. And then it was just the execution could not have been worse. I gave it 1 pinky up, which I think is lower than I gave Hamlet. And I hate Hamlet. So I'm just like, was so shocked and disappointed because I had no like preconceived notions going into it. I haven't even watched the adaptations. I've seen, I think Treasure Planet once, like a long time ago, and I don't remember it very well. So I really had like no preconceived notions going in. I probably thought it would be somewhat good because, it's Treasure Island.
Yeah, it's a classic and it sounds cool.
It was very, very dull.
I do see what you mean though with like it's offensive because it was so badly executed, because
Yeah.
sometimes I'll read a book that's just, cliche, a play off of a ton of stuff that's been done before, and I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
But if there's a really cool premise and it's not executed well, I am enraged. I'm like, why
Yeah.
would you ruin this? Because now no one else can take that because it's no
Yeah,
longer unique.
exactly. And
It'll
so
never be done well.
basically, exactly. So even Kendall, who has read it before and has like many copies of the book set, I think she only gave it like 2.75 pinkies up, which is very low for her because she tends to rate things pretty high. And she said that she just loves all the adaptations and that the book is nowhere near as good as the adaptations. So if you guys are a Robert Louis Stevenson fan, come for me. I don't take it back. This is a hill that I will die on. I hated that book.
Is that who wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I read that one and I liked
it. Is it good? Okay, so
I liked that
one. I
Yeah.
would assume he has some talent. He's very famous. So I'm like, I certainly hope your other book is better because this one was trash. So
wow. All right, cool.
It was probably my harshest review of a book. Probably harsher than Wink Poppy Midnight, which I also did not super enjoy. And harsher than Hamlet. Like this is, I think,
I forgot you didn't like Hamlet. I love Hamlet.
I like individual lines, I think are very artful from Hamlet, but Hamlet as a character just drives me so crazy. I'm like, please stop being you, Hamlet. Please
be someone else.
Please be you, but be better. Like stop being so But anyways, so that's really been my week. I'm still coming down from how awful Treasure Island was. I couldn't even like the last couple chapters. I couldn't even make myself read. I like read summary for them because I was like, I think that's the first time I've ever done that on the pod too, where I was like, this book is so
can't do it.
I can't. So I gave it the one pinky up purely for concept alone. Yeah. So
yeah.
If I just made you mad, fight me. Why do you like Treasure Island? Convince me. Why do you think it's good? Because
I hate Treasure Island. Change my mind.
Yeah, I have a lot of feelings about it. But anyways, I think that's pretty much just been my week.
Wow. Do you have any book recommendations? I said that weird, but I was trying to emphasize. I was trying to be like, a book lack of recommendation, or like don't read this book versus a do, but there's nothing in recommendation that speaks to positivity. So what book recommendations do you have?
Recommendation I have is I want to make sure I say the title right because it's a little bit long and some of the words are made up. It's a middle grade, but it's like a really good middle grade and it's a little bit grittier than most middle grade. You might remember it. I've never read it before, but I do think it was somewhat popular. It's by Obert Sky and it's called Levin Thumps and the Gateway to Foo. And I'm like halfway through it now. It's the one that we're doing next on That Pretentious Book Club. It is, I just dropped stuff. It is so enjoyable. Like it's genuinely so interesting. And sometimes even middle grade books like this season, I've been like, I would have liked it as a kid. As an adult, I'm not as into it. This is one where I'm like, no, I'm into it. I need to know what happens to Levin Thumps. I need to know if he finds the gateway to Foo.
Is his name?
Yes, that's his name. It's
my gosh.
So I guess that's my book bag. What about you?
I didn't really read anything this week, so I have nothing. Wait, that's a lie. What did I read this week? I read something. Oh, well, okay. I did Fantastic Land, which is the book I did Catherine's Corner on. That one was really cool and very different. I also listened to the audiobook.
Book because it looks like it's a horror book.
Yes, but not like in a serial killer ghost monster type of way. It's like it's like Hunger Games in an amusement park and like much darker somehow.
I read the summary for it to write the description for the episode, and I was like, what is she reading? This is terrifying.
I reached the end of my Audible trial, and so literally the last day I was like, how many books can I cram into this day? And I listened to like 2 or 3, and that was one that popped up and I was like, sure, go for it. And it was such a treasure. I was so into it. It's just written very cool, so I would highly recommend that one. It's by Mike Bockoven. His last name is Bockoven, but it's pronounced Bockoven. So I kept having to redo that part of the episode because I kept mispronouncing. It sounds like a chicken in an oven.
That's exactly what it sounds like. And I wanted to make like a bok joke, and I was like, he probably got teased about that his whole life.
It's true.
I just like to choose to be ignorant and to continually mispronounce people's names and never learn how to pronounce them correctly.
That's fair. For the Witcher episodes I did of Catherine's Corner, which is like the other episodes I do on this podcast, I had to redo saying his name like 7 times each time because it's a Polish name, and I I'm still not sure I got it right, but I got it reasonably right.
That's the thing. Yeah, the most recent name is the author of Brooklyn, the book. It's a Calm to Bean, is I believe how it's pronounced, but it's spelled like Calm Tobin, kind of Toibin, but it's Calm to Bean because it's like Irish Gaelic, I think, or I mean that's its origin, I think. So
sounds cool.
I know it sounds really cool when you say it correctly, but yeah, that's when I looked up because I was interested. But kudos to you for trying to pronounce a Polish name. They're so difficult to pronounce. I can't do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see. I also read, I'm gonna forget the author's name, but I also in that audiobook Audible trial, I did The Grand Hotel. I remember that's what it's called. It is a horror book. And I think it's by Scott something, if that helps. Have the first name if you guys want to look it up. It was really cool. It was like the premise is there's this hotel and this group of tourists come in and the desk manager or whatever is leading them around the hotel, and every room they go into there's a different person there with some kind of ghost story. So it's kind of like short stories but in an anthology type of way. And then there's just kind of like, I don't know that it was a twist at the end. I kind of saw it coming, but it's like a pseudo twist at the end about like how they all interconnect. So it was very cool. And I really like that style. One day I want to write something like that if I have a good enough idea, but I like short story anthologies in that way. And I feel like horror does that best. No other genre really seems to be doing that. So
I agree. I think there's also like this layer of like anticipation with like short story anthologies that are horror. Like you're like, is it going to weave together and like what's going to happen? And like the more like the ambiguity is just makes it all feel more ominous.
Yes. Hello, my puppies are here. How did you get in?
Hi, puppies.
Oh, they're not saying anything. Do you want to say hi to Ash?
Yes.
Bark. Hi, Aurora.
Oh, hi, Aurora.
I don't know if you can hear her sniffing, but they're here.
Oh, Aurora,
I don't know how you got in.
Ash loves you. She's like, I'm just gonna hang. Can I just hang?
Wait, the other one's in here too.
Oh my goodness, the babies.
They're so cute. But also they injure me sometimes.
No,
I think Luna straight up bruised my ankle by biting me, which I didn't know was possible, but I'm expecting the bruise tomorrow. It hurts.
Oh my goodness.
But hello, baby. What's up?
Aw.
Hi. She got trapped in here. Anyway,
that's adorable.
What were we talking about? Luna, what do you want to talk about?
She's like,
you don't read. Yeah.
We talk about treats. Oh,
there was the line.
I heard it. The baby.
I know.
They're so cute.
I can't. I have nothing for you.
We need more dog posts on the Scripturient Society Instagram. We need more puppy posts.
It's true. Who doesn't love a puppy? Well, you either have to get mommy or daddy to let you out, or you're staying in here. Because I don't really feel like disconnecting to let you out.
Yeah. They're like, sister.
Yeah.
So cute. I guess what's our word of the week?
Yes, our word of the week is desideratum. I think that's how you say it. Desideratum. Desideratum. And it is something that is needed or wanted. So it's kind of like desire is in there, but not fully.
Desideratum?
Desideratum. Yeah.
Desideratum. That was hard for me to say.
I know. Because the S is not a sound. So it's weird.
Desideratum. Interesting. Built-in bookshelves in my new home are my most recent desideratum.
Yes. I think that is a correct usage.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
good for me.
I know.
Petting your puppies is my desideratum. Oh,
yes.
I want to pet them. I desideratum to pet them.
That one feels less correct, but the statement is correct.
That's correct. Oh, it's so good. Well, should we get into our theme for this episode?
Yes. We are going to be talking about the friends to lovers trope. Woo! Which I really love.
I know. I thought you would like it.
Book Talk doesn't, but I do. Stop whining. Shh.
A lot of people like friends to lovers. TikTok, for some reason, Book Talk wants us to think that they don't, but like Kendall also does too.
I know. It's so good.
It goes back to I have this this hypothesis that people who have had somewhat healthier like familial relationships, particularly if it's like a daughter, like with their father, I think that or if their parents are like display friendship as well as romantic love, I think that those readers are more likely to enjoy friends to lovers. That's my hypothesis. I think it's very psychological.
Yeah, I think that could be true.
Yeah,
I agree. Which brings an interesting like contrast to enemies to lovers.
Yes, it does. In fact, some alarming contrast, actually.
Yeah, like do we want to analyze that, or should we just move on?
Because we'll upset everybody.
Yeah.
I like enemies to lovers when it's done right, but also friends to lovers when it's done right. Because I think the risk with enemies to lovers when it's done incorrectly is that it can be unhealthy. And I think the risk with friends to lovers when it's not done right is that it can be boring or it can feel predictable. So I think they both have a lot to offer, but those are probably their biggest risks. I was also thinking before this episode, I think friends to lovers is extremely common, is a really common trope in books where found family is also a trope. I think it's extremely common. It's a good combo. It's a really good combo. It'd be really hard, I feel like, to pull off an enemies to lovers in a book that's also found family. I feel like that would not, I feel like, what's the point, you know?
Yes. You might have to mute that part. Sorry. She had to come get Luna, but anyway, you can cut that. Cut that in post. Yes, I agree with your point. I already forgot what you said, but I remember agreeing with it.
I also forgot what I said. Oh, found family. Cool. It happens a lot in found family books. Yeah.
Yes, and it works. And enemies to lovers is tough there. And really, those are not the only two options, but they feel like the big two.
Yeah, Book Talk pretty much focuses on those two. There are some more like niche ones, but if you're just going to follow Book Talk tropes, those are the two that are more commonly pitted against each other.
Yeah. And really, you can like both. I don't know that they can coexist. They can coexist in the same book, but not in the same relationship.
Yep.
Or at least I've never seen that done well or at all. But yeah. So here's my question. You can tell me what you think. How long do the characters have to have known each other before they are considered friends enough to be a friends to lovers romance? Like, how do we define this in terms of?
I'm going to go with the same kind of advice that I give people when they say something like, oh, I've been dating so-and-so for so long and he wants to, you know, like do this or that or move in together or get engaged or whatever it is. And they go, do you think it's too soon? And I always tell people, I don't think it's about how long you've been together. I think it's about how much ground you've covered, because some people you've known for many years, but you've not covered that much ground together. And covering ground in a relationship typically means, you know, seeing how each other reacts in conflict, helping each other through conflict, like seeing each other in hard parts of life and good parts of life. So if you've seen all of those things in like a 6-month period already in your partner, and they've already seen it in you, you've covered all of the same ground that a lot of people take years to cover. So I don't know that it matters as much how long people have been like quote unquote friends. I think it's more about how much ground they've covered before becoming friends to lovers. And it also depends on like what kind of burn you want to have. Like if you want to do, I do think that it makes more sense that it would be a slow burn if it's someone who's known you, if it's friends who've known each other for more than a few years, more than like 3 years, I feel like you're going to have a slow burn. I feel like if it's like 6 months or like 6 months to like 2 years, that's more of a fast burn for friends to lovers. It would be really hard, I feel like, for a relationship that's been together for less than 6 months to be friends to lovers. But again, it's about the ground you cover. So if they've like covered a lot of ground and like saved each other's lives and stuff over a period of like a couple months, then maybe they start to feel, you know, romantic feelings towards each other. I mean, they could start to feel romantic feelings towards each other right away. But for the actuation of the romantic feelings, I would give it like absolute minimum 3 months, I think. Right. And then 6 months still feels pretty short. Longer than 6 months seems pretty decent for friends to lovers. But there's no hard and fast rule. I think I just personally go by how much ground has been covered in the relationship. Yeah, I think that's fair. I guess that is kind of like a trick question. Like there's not going to be a certain length of time, because I feel like my answer is to be considered friends to lovers at some point in the like relationship, like friendship, they had to think of each other as only friends and not romantically. And then that has to change. So like
if you meet someone and you're instantly like, ooh, I kind of like him, I don't think that would be a friends to lovers, even if you become friends first, because I feel like there's like that obvious, like, oh, I kind of want something more. Whereas if you, this is why the time factor comes into play. If you met each other when you were like 10, it's probably not your initial instinct when you meet them, and then it grows there. But you could also meet someone at 16, at 25, and you're like, this is a coworker or a fellow student or whatever, and you don't think of them romantically, and then that changes. So I just feel like that's kind of the factor that's necessary to be a friends to lovers, as opposed to just a slow burn or a romance or a rom-com or whatever.
I agree. I also just realized that like I've already contradicted kind of on the surface. It looks like I've contradicted what we said about the two enemies to lovers and friends to lovers like coexisting. But not really. Just on the surface seems like it. I've written 2 different series in which there is both an friends to lovers and an enemies to lovers relationship with the same person. But but one of them is a trick relationship. One of those two in both of these books, one of those 2 relationships is not actually a romantic relationship. I just kind of make it seem like that's what the characters are expecting, and then I flip the switch,
subverting it.
So I subverted, but I don't think you can have 2 fully actualized ones in the same one with the same main character. That wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah. And part of that is because your main character is a certain type of person. They're probably not going to be drawn to both a friend and an enemy, even at various parts in their life. Like they're going to be the kind of person that likes the conflict of the enemy, that likes, all of the things that go along with that. Or they're going to be the person that likes the closeness of the friendship first. I don't think that's going to play out differently in their relationships, even over a lifetime. Like you've said, you're in a love triangle. You as a person are drawn to a certain type of person romantically, and you don't have to fit them in a box, but you're not going to go for 2 completely different kinds of people.
You're not going to actually go for them. You could feel like a societal or social expectation to have feelings for one of them and then have actual feelings for the other, but you're not going to have like the same actual depth of feelings for both of them.
Yes. And that is really the problem that can crop up with friends to lovers, is that there is the societal expectation of it, that like, oh, you've been friends since 5 years old. Oh, you should get married or something like that.
I think that tends to be when it feels like it's dull or kind of falls flat, is when it kind of seems like the characters were just inevitably gonna get together. Not like it was a choice, just because.
Right. If you guys have ever watched The Vampire Diaries, in like episode 1, so even if you've only seen the pilot, Elena, the main character, has like since broken up with her best childhood friend, and they had dated for a while. She was essentially saying that it felt like something they had to try just to know for themselves, but it didn't turn that way as much as she needed it to. And I do
once.
Yep.
Yep. You remember it.
Yep.
It was stressful. I don't recommend. recommend.
And so I do think an important element to friends to lovers is that it has to be a really organic development in the relationship. It can't be something they're doing because it feels like the only thing to do or the next step or what. I mean, it needs to feel natural, essentially. It can't just be, oh, we've been friends for a while, there's no one else really around, I guess I'll give it a try. It needs to be, I think this is really the person. And really, if you are friends with someone, of course, people with different worldviews can be friends, whereas they probably shouldn't date. But your best friend probably shares a certain worldview with you, probably shares certain opinions, probably has a complementary personality. I do think it's very reasonable that it goes there for a lot of people. And I just feel like a lot of times, first of all, in books, it will often be combined with a love triangle in which there is like the, quote, hotter and more mysterious guy to compete with. And most people just want the mysterious guy to win. So that I think is a problem. But also, even when there's no competition and there's no love triangle, I feel like a common problem is that there's no real chemistry. It's just a friendship. And that is okay too. I don't know what you think. I think guys and girls can be friends. I don't think it has to turn romantic. I think maybe you probably think about it like once in a while. You're like, maybe, but I don't think it inherently has to go there. So
I agree.
To say that, or to make it a common theme in a lot of books, or a common trope in a lot of books, that it has to inevitably go there and either go wrong or go flat. I don't think it has to be that way. It should be a natural not conclusion, but a natural development of the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. I think where friends to lovers as a trope can get boring or feel dull is when, because I think a good friends to lovers trope has two things. It feels natural, it doesn't feel forced, and it was a choice. At some point,
Yeah.
both characters made the choice that they wanted to be together romantically. And I
Mhm.
think the reason that with love triangles specifically, I think a lot of like the practical purpose of love triangles is that, especially love triangle where a character ends up with the person they've been friends with for a long time. I think it's because it basically shows readers and the character that they do have a choice. So
Mhm.
then it makes, when they choose their friend, it makes it more of a choice than just something that they kind of fell into. So I just think it's like a more tangible display of, well, I didn't end up with him just because he's the only one or just because we were friends. I think it gives it this added element of, not only did I have another choice, I had another choice that was tempting, and I still decided that I loved this person more. So I
Yes.
think that it just can like increase the impact of the choice. I think even if you're not doing like a hardcore love triangle, I think having like another character that piques the character's interest at least a little bit romantically, not like has like hardcore feelings for, but like has like the idea of, I wonder what dating them would be like. And then
Mm.
you write them in a way where your readers kind of have a crush on that character. I
Mhm.
think that when they choose their friend, I think that makes that choice so much better. I think a good example of that that's not technically a love triangle, but has a little bit of that element is, I'm going to say Shadow and Bone again,
Mhm.
because Alina and Mal, definitely a friends to lovers, right? They've been friends their entire lives. Things
Yep.
would get a little rocky between them though. And it kind of just seemed like they would spend their whole lives together just because. And then in like book 2, Nikolai shows up. And
Mhm.
Nikolai, spoilers, obviously. Nikolai is this, he's charming, he's witty, he's kind of devilish and debonair. He's not even a bad guy, actually. He's not like an enemies
Right.
to lovers thing ever. Like he's never antagonistic. He's just a little like snarkier,
Mhm.
but very sweet and charming. And all the readers, of course, fall in love with Nikolai instantly. And it's not that Alina never has the thought like, ooh, Nikolai is handsome. He is charming. We could have a life together. Like I could, run the army and he can, rule the kingdom. It would be a practical
Mhm.
match as well. And she thinks about it some, and she even feels a little bit of the temptation, but then she still chooses Mal because the depth of her feelings for him are so much more significant. And I think
Yep.
that makes her choice to be with Mal mean so much more than if Nikolai had not ever been a factor.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I think that brings up another point. I think there are two kinds of friends to lovers, and one is the Alina Mal, like have known each other since childhood
Mm-hmm.
type. You also have the met as teenagers or adults and start out as
Mm-hmm.
friends and then go to the lover's direction.
Darkest
But
minds.
yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But with the childhood, like friends since childhood thing, I think in Shadow and Bone, one of the reasons Mel was able to be kind of a jerk and it still worked out for him was because there was this huge history with them, right?
Yes.
All of the stuff we see with Mel, in which we as readers get really annoyed with him, is really only like what, 6 months to a year of their relationship out of
Yeah.
16.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that you could forgive someone for like essentially an off year,
Yeah.
right? Where
Yeah.
things are really stressful. And so even though I think a lot of readers, I wasn't, but a lot of readers were really frustrated when she did pick him,
Mm-hmm.
I think it still makes sense plot and character wise
Oh
because
yeah.
there is that long history. So obviously, I mean, one of the draws with friends to lovers is that people aren't like trying to kill each other and doing terrible things to each other usually, whereas
Mm-hmm.
enemies to lovers kind of goes that way.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do want the love interest in a friends to lovers to be having a rough time, to maybe make some mistakes, I think a long history with the main character can kind of not fix things, because just because you've known someone a long time doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
you should put up with them doing terrible things to you, but
No.
it can make up for lapses in judgment and for certain
Yeah.
types of mistakes
Yeah. It
because you
doesn't
have that history.
excuse their behavior, but it gives you an
Mhm.
explanation for it, and then you can be
Yeah.
more empathetic. I'm going to now reference Gilmore Girls, the show,
Okay.
if you guys are
Hmm.
as into it as I have been to any degree. When Rory's in high school, there's this kind of bad boy character named Tristan, and there's also Paris, who's kind of a bully to Rory for a while. And Paris has this crush on Tristan, and Rory asks her once, like, why? He's such a jerk, like to you, to me. And Paris basically says that she's known him her whole life. They've always been in school together. You don't, like, he has a really hard life. Like, you don't know, he didn't used to be this way. And to Paris, that's enough of a justification to keep holding out hope for him. And it doesn't
Hmm.
obviously turn out, but it's the same concept of when you've known somebody long enough and you've seen who they were, you can kind of see all the different, like the potential for who they could become. And if they're having like a rough 6 months or a rough year or two, like that doesn't, you know them well enough to know that that doesn't mean that that's who they're always going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, doesn't excuse things, but it does explain things.
them.
And it also leads to that kind of found family idea that I'm going to stick with you through anything. And
yeah,
it makes sense. It's not just I met you yesterday and now I'm going to stick through everything with you, because that
and
always
it also makes a slow burn more interesting, because
yes,
I feel like, because that can be like, slow burns can get dull, but if the slow burn is like very ups and downs because he or she is going through something and kind of being a brat, like that just gives it more depth to the slow burn, and also doesn't make it feel like it's just dragging on and on and on.
Right. Yeah, because a lot of times too, the friends to lovers conflict can be we want to be together and we both kind of know that we want to be together, but we're worried that something's going to go wrong and ruin the friendship. And that can last a while. That can be a conflict that contributes to a slow burn in a really realistic way. And so I like it when that happens. It also creates a certain sense of the stakes are actually so much higher if a betrayal or a breakup do happen, because you've now lost your best friend, not just this guy or girl you've been crushing on for a while.
That's true.
So like enemies to lovers is typically the one that has betrayal and stuff. I don't mean to talk about this one a lot, but they kind of match. But friends to lovers can be even more brutal if you want to go there.
Yes,
So,
I've written that before. It is more brutal. And you also have to remember that if you have more than one friend involved, if you have a found family trope and you're doing a friends to lovers, that whatever happens in that relationship is going to also impact the rest of the found family. It's like, I don't like this analogy, but I'm going to use it anyways. If the quote unquote siblings in the quote unquote family break up, like it's going to affect all the other siblings. Or you could say disowned or ostracized from, in this analogy, without it being too alarming. But it's going to affect the rest of the family. And so there's so many extra levels that are involved in a friends to lovers that raise the stakes for it. I do think that the stakes for friends to lovers are just inherently higher. They can be for enemies to lovers too, but you really have to like build them in. They're not just as naturally occurring as in a friends to lovers, especially in a found family book.
Because an enemies to lovers can often turn into I was being tricked, or he was tricking me, or what was real. Whereas if there's a betrayal in a friendship, that's not a trick. That's just a betrayal. Like there is no, was I wrong? This is just, this person cares about me and has decided to betray me.
Yes. It's significantly worse. Like if a stranger walks up to you and punches you in the face, you're going to be like, what the hell, man? If like your best friend walks up to you and punches you in the face, you're like, dude, like, and your relationship is forever changed from then on, and you have to still deal with them. Yeah.
So I think that can work really well. The other great thing, there are many, but the other great thing about friends to lovers is that I think we both are probably thinking in terms of like fantasy and dystopia and sci-fi, but friends to lovers works in basically every genre.
That's true.
Enemies to lovers can really work best in speculative fiction stuff. I don't know that enemies to lovers works in like a rom-com situation. They have the whole rivals to lovers thing, but that's not the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah. And so enemies to lovers is going to be a bit genre specific. Friends to lovers can really be used anywhere. It could be in historical, it could be in a rom-com, it can be in a fantasy. So it's also a little more diverse in that way, that it can be spread around.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely more applicable is not the word. I don't know. It's more flexible. You can definitely, I can't think of a genre where you couldn't use it. And there are some genres where you could do enemies to lovers, but you kind of have to like change it to rivals to lovers or manipulate it in some way or other to make it fit. Like, not that you can't do it, but friends to lovers is just natural. And also I think it's more, for if you write more realistic fiction, I think that it might be a better choice because it's more relatable and it's more achievable. Whereas enemies to lovers in real life for a healthy relationship, I think is very rarely the case. It's fun and speculative fiction because we assume that there's a level of idealism in that world where the enemy grows as a person and becomes a consistently better person. That is unfortunately very often not the world that we live in. So it can happen, but it's a lot rarer. So friends to lovers is a lot more attainable of an idea for realistic fiction as well, and probably also a healthier idea.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of reasons that it works better in realistic fiction. But
Yeah.
I mean, it can work in any genre. Absolutely.
Yeah. What other points do I have? Do you have any points you want to make? I have others, but
I assumed you would. No, I didn't, because I know this is
okay.
like one of your favorite tropes. So I was like,
Yes,
Catherine is going to be, sorry, not even Catherine, Carissa. Really, this time
yes.
it's Carissa is going to be ready for this.
It's true. The peaceful, sweet side of me is the one that loves friends to lovers.
Yes.
Sorry. So speaking of healthy relationships, which I do think friends to lovers tends toward more so.
Mhm.
I think that is the case because what you find valuable in a friend is probably what you also find valuable romantically.
Mhm.
And so this is, and I'm not trying to criticize too much enemies to lovers and other stuff like that, because I do enjoy them when they're done well. But the problem with a lot of those is that when they are done badly, they do create like a toxic situation in which someone is being
Mhm.
asked to change where they shouldn't or don't need to. Friends to lovers, you're already probably going to have a lot in common and you're sharing a lot. And whether it's a childhood thing or a new thing, I just think because it comes so naturally from an already existing relationship that is positive, right? Friendships are
Mhm.
generally positive.
Yeah.
It's just more likely to go well. I don't know. I suppose that's debatable too. I've never dated my best friend because I don't have a male best friend, but I assume that tends to go well because you already care about each other. You're probably not going to do like terrible things to each other. Like you might have to break up, but you're probably not going to like
Mhm.
cheat on each other or do that kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah.
I have read some books where that happens, and I don't know. I guess that's sort of what happened in Shadow and Bone, but like low level cheating, right? It was a kiss, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, they weren't even, but they weren't together then.
Right.
So I don't even think it
So
counts.
yeah, so
Yeah. I
there's
don't think he
little
would.
things,
Yeah. Yeah. I
but
agree. I
not huge
think
things.
like friends can still have a bad breakup, and I've dated friends before and I don't recommend it, you guys.
Well,
But
fair.
it's true, the breakups are not as ever as bad, like the breakups are, no one typically does anything like to really hurt the other person. It's typically something like, we aren't really that good of a match romantically, but we just felt like we should be because everyone around us who knows us, our quote unquote found family, like really wanted us to be. So there's that can make it just kind of like, it just doesn't really work out. And then there's also the idea of, I think this is something too, where friends to lovers, you have a little bit of drama where you could do like a friends to lovers like twist, which is what I've done a couple times, where it seems like they'd be really good together and the characters are like convinced they'd be really good together. But if there's any period of time in which the characters have not been together, like Friends reunited, they've both changed significantly since then, because people do change. Because just because you were like best friends as kids or like, teenagers doesn't mean that you still have enough of the important things in common to make a relationship work. But still, when that happens, the breakups are still not, will never be as bad as in an enemies to lover situation where you're enemies again.
Right.
It's
Unless there
definitely
is a
still a
betrayal
lot
thing,
mellower.
but
Yeah, unless there's a betrayal thing, but it's just is not, I just agree, it's not as common, it doesn't make as much sense.
Yeah. And I don't know, I feel like I talk about the healthy romantic relationship thing a lot, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I do think it is important that as writers, we are being realistic in the way that we portray things like relationships, because we've talked about this before, I think, where if you're writing fantasy, realism isn't coming from whether or not dragons do or don't exist. You don't have to come up with a scientific explanation, right? It needs to be internally consistent, but it doesn't have to be, quote, realistic in the sense that could really happen. Where the realism kind of comes into play in something like fantasy is in the relationships. And so if you're making those unhealthy in some kind of way, I think that does affect readers, particularly if you're going middle grade or young adults. I think that can lead them to make bad choices in their own lives. And it's not like your fault as an author what people do or don't take out of your story, because of course people are going to abuse it and get things out of it that you didn't intend. But I do think you have a certain responsibility to your audience to be fair to them.
Yeah.
And so I think healthy relationships are important unless you are going to specifically talk about why they are unhealthy and how,
Yeah.
like if you're going to portray it as unhealthy,
Yeah.
like
If
this
you're
is
going
an
to show the
abusive situation.
consequences. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the thing.
So
I agree. I think that there's nothing that you shouldn't write about, but I think especially, like she said, especially for middle grade and young adult readers, and I would say even new adult, because we all just become, if you're a reader, you know that your personality and your choices are largely a conglomeration of the things that you've read and absorbed and other things as well, but it does make a big impact. And so I think, write whatever you want to write whatever kind of relationship you want to write, but whether you're writing fantasy, sci-fi, or realistic fiction or something, anything in between, you want the consequences to be realistic. So, and that's a thing that I have a problem with in a lot of like TV shows and movies that show a lot of characters having like casual sex with no consequences. Because I'm like, I don't mind that the story involves people having sex, because that's real life. I mind when they act like there's no consequences to that, good or bad, like that there's no like resulting anything from it. And that's just not true, because every action has an equal and opposite reaction, good or bad. And I think our responsibility as writers is not to censor our stories, but to make sure that we're being accurate with their outcomes as much as we can be. And like she said, it's not your responsibility what somebody takes from your book or chooses to do based on that. But your responsibility begins and ends with, I think, trying to portray consequences as realistically as we can.
Yep. Because that's really where realism is going to come in. You can make anything look realistic if you just take care with the consequences and the way that you write it and the way you portray it.
And I'm saying consequences, which makes it sound like a negative thing, but sometimes the consequences of an action are a good thing. So I'm saying on both sides of it, but I do think you need to be especially careful with relationships, because I do know, especially on Book Talk, people openly idolize like I think what most of us would agree are unhealthy enemies to lovers things. And so while it's fun to read about, in real life, if they were to take that, again, that's not your responsibility if they do, because they should know better, most likely. But that's not probably going to turn out well for them. So I think it's more responsible to show that there are negative consequences to some of that stuff. So.
And part of this might be the age range idea, right? Because once you start getting into new adults, there is a lesser responsibility, because the readers should kind of know,
should be more fully baked as a person.
Yeah, they should have their own opinions about morality by now. And it's not your job to tell them what to think or to scold them or to praise them. It's your job to give them a story. And you shouldn't preach at your teen or middle grade readers either. But there's a little bit more of a being clearer. Clear about the consequences and everything. And with A Friends to Lovers, I had a point and I forgot it.
I'm sorry.
Pause. It's okay. It's not your fault. Consequences. I know I had it. What were we talking about?
Friends to lovers, consequences, enemies to lovers, consequences, good and bad.
Yes, age range. Okay. I have that keyword in my mind palace.
Oh my God.
I do think that stories like Enemies to Lovers can work in the YA and maybe middle grade scene, but part of what makes Friends to Lovers cool is also probably that it doesn't really matter what age range you're writing for. The friends aspect is always going to be accessible and age appropriate.
True.
So
Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, immediately. Yeah, I'm like, all the big ones.
Yeah, I mean, really, Percy and Annabeth are a great example of a perfect Friends to Lovers, because they are, when they initially meet, there isn't that initial, oh, I want to marry this person. They're so cute because they're what, 11? And there's, Annabeth is annoyed with him and he's like, gosh, she's such a know-it-all. And then it turns into something along the way. So not childhood friends, but like preteen friends.
And also in that series, there's also kind of, spoiler if you guys haven't read it by now, which is crazy if you haven't. I mean, Annabeth kind of has feelings off and on for Luke, who was also a childhood friend who kind of becomes an enemy. So there's like an enemies to lovers, like there's hints of that kind of drama, but it's never like the big picture. So then also when Annabeth, that makes it like so much more impactful when she not only chooses Percy later on, but when she chooses to remain on her side of the war, because it's, turning her back on Luke as a potential romantic interest, Luke and his, his way of thinking. So I think that's, I think that had that there too, which just made it all the more interesting.
Exactly. And that whole friends to lovers piece that comes with Annabeth and Percy, also Percy had, what was her name, Rachel, so he kind of also liked someone else. So
Yeah.
there is this idea of they're not locked into each other until they actively choose each other. It's not that they're each other's only option. It's not that they feel this pressure to never move past each other.
Yes.
It's, hey, there are these other options, but I still really want you. And that's very satisfying. It's cute, and it makes for a nice shipping fandom thing.
Like perhaps Darkest Minds book 1, at the end of the first book, there's another sort of that's not an enemies to lovers. It's almost like another like faux friends to lovers, and then it ends up not, because she chooses the other guy, because she never had feelings for the other guy, but it still made the choice more visible. Exactly. Like Liam. So it made her choice to choose Liam as a love interest and a friend a lot more visible and interesting. It's just so much more interesting. This is why I like love triangles. This is not the episode, so I think we already did an episode on love triangles, but this is getting to the root of why I like love triangles. I like seeing a character presented with a different possibility and then choosing their love interest in any ways. I think that just makes, I think it makes so much more of a difference.
And the great thing with friends to lovers is that it is really conducive, along with other tropes, to use it. It goes with found family, it goes with the love triangle if you want it to, whatever. And I do think that the age range thing counts too, because you have Percy Jackson, which is middle grade, you have the Darkest Minds, which is YA. You can scatter it around. I don't know if that's the right term, but you can use it basically anywhere. You could use it, I guess you could use it in a children's book. People don't grow up and get married in those usually, but
I'm going to pull a Karissa. May I pose a third option there so friends to lovers, enemies to lovers, and then one of my personal favorites, I think I might have invented myself, enemies to friends to lovers, which you can only do if you do a super, super slow burn, which is definitely my thing. But where characters start out as enemies, they become friends because they have to work together. And then over a pretty long period of time, they realize that they've developed feelings for each other. But they definitely did not go from enemies to lovers straight away. They definitely had a good friendship period in the middle there. I think that's one of my favorites. And I think it should be considered another option. It's good in between. You have to be there for the slow burn though. If you don't like a slow burn, you're not going to like enemies to friends to lovers. But I think that this should be a third option.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. I also, the Catherine side of me does like the idea of lovers to enemies. So, that's also there.
Good. That's also an option, you guys. Oh my gosh.
There's so many.
Mix things up also. These are not, there's so many, I've said it before. This is very nuanced. We're talking in like big basic terms, but each one of these is very nuanced. And if you think of a way to do it that's not been done before, do that. That's great. Like there's these aren't really rules. This is just like pros and cons of, enemies to lovers or friends to lovers and how to pull them off the best way. But there's a lot of nuance to it. It doesn't have to be just like this, because relationships are nuanced and relationships go through different phases. I also like friends to enemies, which is actually, I think, more brutal than lovers to enemies.
I agree. I feel like that one's also more universally relatable, because not everyone's had a romance. Everyone has had a friend.
Friendship.
I would hope.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And a friend typically has known you longer than a romantic love interest. And so a betrayal from a friend is so much more hurtful. So it's just like we said, like a breakup tends to mean more, even if they're nicer to each other. A betrayal from a friend is so intense. So
it is.
That's a good one too, which is not a romantic one, but it's good.
I mean, it's along the
maybe it's because one of the friends thought they were in love with the other friend, and that friend didn't love them back.
Oh,
maybe that's why.
True enemy. I like that.
I feel like that's also really realistic. I feel like that happens a lot in guy-girl friendships. And I will say it again, that I've seen that a lot with my nice guy friends who have said nice guys never win. It's often after they have told one of their friends that are girls that they have feelings for them, and the girl doesn't have feelings back. And they've never become enemies, because this isn't a book, but they have acted like that girl has no judgment, and she's so selfish, and she's going to regret this later. And I'm like, she's probably not.
She's probably fine. She'll move on.
Fine. Yeah.
Faster than you.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like positive tips. I feel like a lot of stuff we've been saying is like, don't do this with friends to lovers. Um, I, I really,
I mean, I think keeping in mind the time frame that your story is going to take place in is a good idea when you're planning like the romance and character development, because your character's development should be impacted by their love interest, whether it's friends to lovers or otherwise. So I think keeping that in mind when you're thinking about character development, like where does the character begin the story, like as an inner person, and how do they end it? There should be difference in any book, but it should be greatly influenced by the love interest. And I think keeping in mind, like I said, timeline, like how long is the first book? How long is the series? Are you going to have time to build the friendship and see a lot of the friendship throughout the series? Or is it a shorter series? So you need to imply that the friendship has already been long established.
Right.
So I think keeping that in mind is important if you're going to do a friends to lovers.
Yeah. I think too, I don't want to contradict myself with my Mal point earlier. Mal,
I do it all
I never
the
know how to say
time.
his name.
Mel.
Mel from Shadow and Bone. When I do think you need to be careful. This is not a positive tip. This is a negative tip. Don't do this. You have to be careful. Yeah. That when you are writing a friends to lovers, you have to be careful not to ruin the love interest, right? So if something like enemies to lovers or with a normal situation, you're just going to take more crap from enemies and strangers because they don't know you and you don't know them, and they don't know you well enough to know what's going to upset you, right? If a stranger says something mean to you, they might just not know that that's upsetting to you, whereas your best friend is going to know. And so while it can be like, if you're going the betrayal route, or you're going this person needs to go through some personal growth route, they can do bad things, but you also, there's like a line, and I'm not sure that it's a concrete line for like universally. There is a line that you don't want to cross, to where that love interest becomes unlikable, and now the main character is just staying with them because they were friends, right? I do think being friends can make up for a lot of mistakes because there's that history there, but you want the love interest in a friends to lovers to be likable. And so you need to make sure that the mistakes that they're making and the character flaws that they have are things that are more on the relatable side, or the fixable side, or the, not enormous consequences result from this side, so that people can still root for them even when they do make mistakes, because of course that's going to happen. But when an enemy makes a mistake, you're rooting for them to fall, and you're like, gosh, I hate you, until it turns. But because you've already established with a friends to lovers that this is someone we like, someone the main character likes, you don't want to go backwards. Whereas with an enemies to lovers, you're like, this is someone we don't like. We can continue on that path until it turns, but we can't go backwards on the friends to lovers. Once you've made someone irredeemable in a friends to lovers, they are gone. So be careful of that, because it can be tempting to kind of use the history as a blanket excuse for anything. And while I do think it makes up for things, it should not excuse, like doing terrible things like cheating on them or trying to kill their family or something like that.
Absolutely not. I think it's the idea of friends to lovers typically have a deeper relationship because they have a deeper history, but that also means that any wounds inflicted run deeper, like the wounds are deeper. And so I think that while there's a lot you're willing to, like, your characters will be willing to forgive each other of in a friendship, each character should have a line. And you as the writer should know what that line is. Like, if this character does or says XYZ, there will be no coming back from that. And so I think it's important, especially like when you're, building your characters and like doing your character worksheet or whatever. I think it's a good idea when you're going to have a romance to write down what line could this character not forgive the other one for crossing. And it actually gives you a little more freedom when you're writing the characters, because then you can have them like tiptoe up to the line, tiptoe back to the line. And the farther they are from the line, probably the more likable they are. The closer to the line, the more you play with the risk of them being too unlikable. So I wouldn't ever keep them up close to the line. But I think that your readers are going to see what the line would be intuitively for your character. So the closer your other character is to the first character's, emotional line, the more your readers are going to feel in defense of that character, the more they're going to not like the other character. Farther away, better. So I think knowing specifically where that line is as the writer actually gives you a lot more freedom to play with that.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good tip. I should try that.
I know.
'Cause-
I just came up with it myself, and now I'm like, I should
Good.
also try that.
Good advice, me. I'm going to try that.
Yeah. Wow, I'm like really smart sometimes.
You really know what I'm talking about. This
Thanks,
is great.
good one, Ash.
Yeah, I feel like I should have more to say about this because I do love it so much, but I think a lot of it is just friends to lovers. It comes down a lot to natural development, and that's going to come down to a lot of instinct on the author's part. I know there are a lot of books out there that kind of teach you how to write, and of course we're trying to give you advice, but I do think that when you write enough and you read enough, at some point it just becomes instinct to do things, and to be able to tell when a friends to lovers is going to work and not work and what lines you can go up to.
Yeah.
I think that's like a practice makes perfect type of thing.
I think
So it's hard to give you super concrete advice. I would say the number one thing you have to make sure that they have is chemistry as both friends and as lovers, which means that there needs to be kind of a distance that they still have to bridge to become friends to lovers, right? Because friends, of course, can tolerate more differences between them than a romantic couple probably can.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you can have a best friend, but you're not limited to one friend. You're typically limited to one romantic partner.
Yeah.
And so there has to be just like a deeper connection there. So there's got to be, you still have to put conflict into it. So there's got to be something there that they have to bridge the gap. Otherwise it's too easy. And it's like, why wouldn't they have been lovers anyway?
Yeah.
But I think that chemistry as friends needs to be the type of thing that could continue on indefinitely, but that gap is bridged. And now we've crossed the line we can't undo. And now we're in this lover's state. And we also have chemistry here.
Yeah.
I think that's just the general advice I would give. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is definitely something that you get the feel for when you write it. And I think if you have had like a lot of good friendships in your life, pulling from those experiences and pulling from how you feel in that friendship is probably a good idea. Like writing down like adjectives of how you feel with that friend or with your friends, even your friends who you were not interested in romantically, just so you can kind of get the feel for how to portray friendship. I think enemies to lovers is practically easier to write. I think because it's not as deep. Friends to lovers, even just writing friends, like the found family trope, I think is harder to execute because you have to really understand friendship and the nuances of friendship and how friendship relationships change and grow and what the boundaries are for friendship versus romance. And romance, I said that weird, romance. I said that romantically. Oh my God. I clearly know romance. But I think just making sure you have a really good grasp of that before you attempt a friends to lovers, or just make sure that you're really actively thinking about it and working on that, because I do think it's harder. I think it takes more skill to execute a friends to lovers in a
there are
realistic
just
and interesting
too many
way.
ways it can go wrong.
There's so many ways that it could go wrong. And
which is weird.
It could be boring, it could be unhealthy, it could be predictable. Those are the risks that you face. So I also think just being aware, if you're writing a friends to lovers, of what risks that trope typically faces so that you can consciously do what it takes to avoid falling into those pitfalls. I think that's just, and a lot of it is just practice, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I discovered a large ink smear on my arm that I did not realize was there until just now. Anyway,
you're clearly a writer.
There you go. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have anything else.
Okay, sweet. Me either. Well, in that case, do you want to tell us how your writing's been going?
I do. I had a really great week. I also had a weird week. I have 2 stories. So I'm going to start with the super positive one. I finished writing that short story I told you guys about last week. It's just my rough draft, but I'm very excited about it. I think it's really good. And it's this idea that's really been ping-ponging around in my brain for several years now. And I could not figure out the plot. And I know that sounds strange, but I had the character and I had the world building, right? But I did not have a plot. I was like, I don't know what is going to happen in this story. And finally, I just sat down with a notebook and I was writing out like what would happen in this scenario. And I figured it out and I wrote it in one day. It was very cool. And
Nice.
I said I'm going to submit it to the L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Future contest. And it's below 10,000 words, which is really cool because normally I use that whole 17,000 and I did not this time. And it's not like nothing needs to be added. It's so good as is. I really think at this point it's just editing for, like making it as beautiful as possible as opposed to fixing anything plot wise. Short stories are going to have fewer plot holes. Yeah. So I'm excited about it. I'm going to send it to you when I edit it a little more. I'm taking a couple days break from it. It turned very dark at the end, which is not surprising to me, but is also surprising to me.
That's not surprising to me at all.
I know. And I don't even know how to describe it to you. It's just one thing that I feel is maybe out of place in the story, but I also feel like it's super necessary to showcase the end. So I don't know. You'll tell me what you think, but
yes, I will.
I think it's very cool and I'm very excited about it. So that was really cool.
That is cool.
Then I did a super weird thing and I cannot tell how weird it is. So you're going to tell me how weird. I can't tell if this is like, oh yeah, that's strange, but whatever. Or
really
if this is like
on what's not weird.
Well, I can't tell. So you're going to be at least an outside perspective.
I got you.
I was supposed to go to bed early. My family was coming to town, right? And I was getting ready and I was like, I should go to bed early so that I can be well rested. And that never happens for me because I always stay up latest on the nights that I say I need to go to bed early. So I'm like getting ready for bed. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and listen to some ASMR for like 10 minutes. And about 5 minutes in, I can't just randomly, lines will come into your head. I came up with a line of poetry and I was like, that was pretty good. I'm going to write that down. So I just opened up a document and I wrote it down and I was like, but what if this was the next line? So I continued writing it and I wrote this poem. Are they elegies? Is that what they're called? It's a memorial poem, right? It's like grieving someone who has died things about someone that is not dead yet.
That is creepy.
Is it creepy? I think it's creepy.
It's just a sign of how much you love that person, but it also is creepy.
Yeah. I like killed them off in my head to be like, okay, now let's write that. And I'm like, I'm crying as I'm writing it. And I have to keep reminding myself they're not dead. It's fine. And
oh my God.
Part of me is like the side of me that's like, maybe this could be normal is that when this person does die, because they are significantly older than me and will probably not outlive me, then I just have this poem that like will help and maybe I can read it at the funeral and stuff. But the side of me that acknowledges that this is super weird is just like, is this serial killer level stuff? Because I don't want to kill anyone. I don't want him to die. I'm just ready.
To say no.
I don't know.
I think, okay, so I've never executed a poem about it, but I definitely have like sat there and thought about like, what if this person passes away, and literally have started crying because I can so clearly see what would happen and how I will feel and how it would change my life. And I definitely have thought about that and like made myself cry about it. I've never written a poem about it because to me that would feel like actualizing it. So
do you want to know the weirdest thing?
Yes.
It's not the first time I've done it. I have done this before. I have death poems for both my parents.
That's very creepy.
I think it's creepy.
I think it comes from a very normal place. I think it's creepy that you have executed it in the form of poems, but I don't think it's bad. I think it's just weird. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a serial killer thing. I think that
it's like non-violent weird. Good.
Yeah, it's non-violent weird, I think for sure. Because I think I think about that, not just like, I definitely think about that a lot with a lot of people. So I don't think that part is weird. And I'm assuming the poems are all like very positive, like I'll miss you type stuff. So it's not, if it was like, and your death and I was so happy. Now that would be like serial killer. I would say it's weird, but sweet.
Okay. That's good. I like that. Weird, but sweet.
Weird, but sweet. Yeah.
So I stayed up doing this. And as I am doing it, I am thinking, this is really weird. You should stop. But it's weird. I think it's a pretty good poem. So I was like, keep going.
That's so cute.
I don't write a lot of poetry. I dabble. I don't know that I'm good at it, but this felt good. There are a couple of poems I've written that I feel like are pretty good, but also I'm a terrible judge of like as a writer, you're like, I love it, but do other people love it? Poetry is
Yeah.
especially hard because it's so easy to get cheesy with the rhyme thing.
Easy to get cheesy.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that was an
true.
accident. Look, I am a poet. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't know. It was weird, but I just have it now. So we'll see
Sweet.
if
I
I need
want to
it.
know, what poem you would write for my death now.
I can kill you off tonight in my head and
That'd be
let you know.
great. That'd be great. I would love that. I want to know.
Okay.
Cool.
Nice.
Neato.
I will
This
write
is
death
so
poems for
weird, but
everyone.
it's weird, but feels very positive.
Yeah. It's like I would miss really like the theme of this poem is like I am so depressed that you're dead, but like that's good because it means that you had a big impact in my life.
Yeah.
Like it's good that I'm sad because it means that I was happy at one time, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I like it's mostly positive, but it is also like this is devastating.
It's almost like emotionally processing in advance. And I think that I do
Yes.
that for people who mean a lot to me because the idea of not having them is so just earth shattering that I think my
Mhm.
brain is like, if you don't start to process right now the fact that at some point you won't have them, it will
Mhm.
completely destroy you. So I
Mhm.
think it's very normal. I think it's a sign of someone means so much to you that your brain is like, hey, you need to remember you're not going to have this person for all of eternity. At some point, you're going to
Yeah.
have to be without them. And if you
Yeah.
don't start to process this now, you are going to be so far from ready when that eventually happens.
Yeah. I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds fine.
It's probably
So
fine. It's weird because I
fine.
think a lot of people don't do it, like don't actually
Yeah.
write the poem, but I think it comes from a very real and probably a very healthy place.
That's good. All right. I like that.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I wrote a short story that turned accidentally dark, and I wrote a death poem for someone who is not dead that went unexpectedly, also dark and light. So that was my week.
Oh God, that's good.
Yeah.
I don't really have any writing updates for y'all,
Mm.
unfortunately, because as I said before, I have been doing a lot of reading, so I've not really been getting to do my writing. And by writing, I really mean finishing the edit of my book because I need to finish
Mhm.
it so I can query it. And I've also been applying for a lot of like freelance editing and writing gigs just to try to put back some extra money for the house. So I can't remember if I said this last episode, but if you guys need an editor, I'm here. I'm once again
Yeah.
open to work. I go through like periods where I'm like, I'm open to work again. And then I'll get a couple, interview requests or whatever for people needing like a freelance editor. And then I'll be like, I'm so sorry, I'm done. I'm done for like another little while. But that's what's nice
Mhm.
about freelancing. So I've been doing that with what little extra time I've had. So hopefully I'm hoping tomorrow I might get to do some editing. It's going to really depend on if I finish reading 11 Thumps in the Gateway to Food tonight. If I finish
Yes.
reading it
Gotta know what
tonight,
happens to 11
I can
thumbs.
probably edit tomorrow. Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, so and then I can start reading Great Expectations the next day. So so hopefully I'll do it. I've also been watching Virgin River. So because I've been too
Yeah.
tired to edit, like my brain has been like, we are so tired but we want to feel like we got to enjoy the day a little bit. So I'll watch some Virgin River and then yeah.
Cool.
So that's my update. It's not like a great update. It's just where I'm at. So
Yeah, fair enough.
yeah.
We can't all write death poems.
No,
So
we can't. Well, we could, but we don't. And that might be a good thing that we don't all do that. But I
yeah.
think yours was a positive experience.
It's
So
probably best that I am a rarity in that sense. It's probably good that
yeah.
only a few people do this.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit alarming. I'm so curious now to know like what you would write for me when I'm dead. But I
Yeah.
definitely want you to write something and read it at my funeral.
Okay, cool.
I assume I'll be
Assuming I
gone
outlive
before
you.
you. Well, yeah, I would
Why do you
assume
assume
so.
that?
I feel like I don't have as much of a problem with dangerous situations as I should. I
That's
feel
fair.
like I enjoy the thrill a little bit too much.
Mm.
So I don't know.
Just
We talked
greater
about this in
chance.
college. I have this really unfortunate hero syndrome, like hero complex, where I'm like, I can take care of this. I'm going to go solve this problem for someone. And I'd put myself in danger to solve it. Now,
That's
do
right.
I have any hero-like capabilities? We could argue that. Probably
No.
not. So I have a hero complex without the abilities of a hero. So I'm just predicting you'll outlive me.
That actually is fair because I was sitting here like, but I'm older than you, so I should die before you. But I'm not a risk taker, very
I'm going to try and
cautious.
save someone or something I have absolutely no business trying to save. That's probably how I'm going to go out.
Not a terrible way.
It's
That's a lot.
not.
That's good fodder for a poem.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, it's a little embarrassing for me, but it was a good intention, you know?
yeah.
It's a good thing I'm a writer. I get to try and live those out with characters that can actually have the capabilities they need to be heroic. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's everything I got for this week. So if you guys want to tell us your writing updates, you guys should. We definitely want to talk about what you're working on and talk about tropes and what you guys are reading too. We love having conversations about reading and writing. It's obviously our main thing. If you guys want to do that, you can message us on social media. Also follow us for like updates and tips and tricks for writing and funny videos on Instagram and TikTok at the Scripturient Society. You can also email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com if you want to write us a longer letter or you want to ask us to, talk about something specific in one of the episodes. We'd be happy to do that. If you guys want to join our writing group on Patreon, you can also do that. You can just go in there, go to Story Siren Studio, leave a comment. We will see it. It's free to do that. I think that's everything that we've got for you guys. So until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.